So Gladiator II has cast Denzel Washington as one of the lead roles. It leads many people to ask the question, who is he meant to be playing? And in this video, I'm gonna cover the true story of Denzel Washington's character, and it's even crazier than Hollywood could have imagined. Denzel Washington is playing Marcus Macrinus. He is known to history as Macrinus, simply as Macrinus. And there's some differing accounts on his origins. There's actually a lot of rumors and slander written about his character for things that he had done later in his life. Many of the Roman historians viewed him quite negatively, and they said crazy lies about him, like he was a poacher, he was a gladiator, even a prostitute in his early life. But none of this is true. The rumor that he was a gladiator may be something they picked up on in the movie and something they want to run with, but it definitely was not true. He was born into an upper class family, not the richest and most elite, but still quite wealthy. Class was known as the equestrians. And he was born in the Roman province of Mauritania. At this time, the Roman Empire is at pretty much its greatest extent. It includes North Africa. And so Macrinus was from a port city in modern-day Algeria, which was at the time called Caesarea or Caesarea. You can actually see the ruins of the city today in Algeria. And many of the chroniclers say that he was a Berber. The Romans would have simply referred to him as African. And there's statues of him. You can see how he looked. He came from quite a wealthy family. His parents would have afforded him the best education and upbringing, even though he grew up outside of Rome. And later in his life, he would eventually make his way to the big city, to Rome, to pursue his career as a lawyer. Macrinus, he wasn't a gifted soldier. He wasn't known for being a military man. He was known as being a very good administrator, good with finances, and a pretty good lawyer. There's some accounts of him which say that he wasn't the most knowledgeable lawyer when it came to law. He wasn't the most knowledgeable, but he was truthful, he was honest and hardworking. And through his, his good nature, his goodwill, he made many connections in Rome, and he worked his way up into quite important positions. And during this time, it was the reign of an emperor called Septimius Severus, who was a very tough, austere military man. He was a military-minded emperor who came to power through a civil war where he defeated all of his rivals and came out on top. So he was a truly tough man. And Septimius Severus, he wasn't the greatest emperor of Roman history, but he left the empire in a better state than he inherited it, which is good enough. And so he was pretty good. And Macrinus is there working in the court in various positions. He was even given the role of managing one of the most important highways between Rome and northern Italy, which was called the Via Flaminia. And this was such an important position, a lot of responsibility. It's a very important trade route for the empire. So he must have been well respected and very, very competent to have that position. While this is all happening, Septimius Severus, he's coming to the end of his reign. He has two sons. His oldest son is called Caracalla, and his younger son is called Gita. And he has named them both co-emperors. He wants them, when he dies, to rule alongside each other like good brothers. But the way things played out couldn't be farther from their father's wishes. And these two brothers hated each other with a passion. They didn't eat at the same table. They They couldn't even be in the same building together. In fact, after their father had died and they became the co-emperors, they split the palace in two and barricaded, you know, the divider between them with guards. Many people were fearful that this would lead to the splitting up of the Roman Empire itself, which would have been a huge problem, as you know, for all the work and sacrifice that had been done to form this empire, for it only to be split into two. People didn't really want that, especially people at the top. And so Septimius Severus's sons, who came up, Geta and Caracalla, they were lazy, they were arrogant, they didn't have any real good qualities. Geta was a little bit more liked and was a little bit more of a people person, and he was a bit kinder and had a good reputation and relationship with the Praetorian guards and with the army. They liked him. He was kind of a more friendly guy. But his older brother Caracalla wasn't really liked by anyone, and he was a bit more of a tyrant. And these two co-emperors, after their father died, they tasked Macrinus with being the financier of the empire. They had some role taking care of the finances. You know, that wasn't something that they even wanted to deal with. Boring work. And these two co-emperors, they pretty much at each other's throats. They couldn't agree on anything. And it got to the point where each brother was paranoid that the other would try to kill them. So whenever they met in public, they always had their guards surrounding them, and they could never, you know, have normal interactions. And it got to the point where their mother, their poor mother, tried to arrange like a peace meeting between these two brothers to hash things out. She invited them over to her house, and they came without weapons, without guards. Geta was there inside waiting for his brother Caracalla just to make up and, you know, be good brothers and work together. And what does Caracalla do? This is kind of the reason why Caracalla, he's a very despicable person, very low person. What he did here, he had his thugs burst into the room and push the mother aside as she's frantically trying to protect her son. They grab his brother Geta and stab him to death. Keep stabbing him until he's dead. And he dies in his mother's arms while Caracalla is standing there. And, you know, that's how low and how much of a scumbag Caracalla was. Not only to kill his brother, but to do it during a peace deal in front of their mother. You know, truly a despicable person. And that was only the beginning of Caracalla's reign. There's a lot more that he did, and he deserves an entire video for himself. And I believe he's also portrayed in Gladiator II, so we'll definitely have a video about that. And so Macrinus, there he was, ending up, you know, having to work for this psychotic, murderous tyrant. You know, that's pretty much the situation he was in. Shortly after the death of Geta, Caracalla named Macrinus the Praetorian prefect, which is a very high role. Basically, he was in charge of the imperial guard and finances of the empire. It was a very important role, almost second to the emperor, almost. And maybe Macrinus knew what happened. Maybe he knew about the murder, and this was a way of Caracalla, you know, gaining his loyalty, giving him this position. Maybe. We don't know for certain. And so time goes by, and Caracalla, eventually the rumor about his brother's murder, it's kind of known that Caracalla did it, but you know, he kind of changed the story as time goes on, that he was actually defending himself. And, you know, people just started to get the idea that he was kind of a murderer and a psychotic person. And there were many other things that he did that we don't have time to actually get into. Long story short, Caracalla decides to go on a tour of the empire. He goes to the east. He's touring all these different regions like Egypt, Asia Minor, and he gets to Syria, and where the border of the Roman Empire is with the Parthian Empire, which was the pretty much sort of Persian, Iranian empire that was a major power in the east. And Caracalla, being the sicko that he arranged a meeting with the Parthian king, and he arranged to marry the daughter of the Parthian king to bring peace between the two empires and, you know, have a long-lasting relationship. During the wedding, the Parthians are all there. The king of Parthia is there with his daughter, ready to celebrate, ready for a wedding, a massive royal wedding. And Caracalla shows up. He orders his men to start butchering everyone and murdering everyone. And so it's kind of like a scene from the Red Wedding of Game of Thrones. And that's what Caracalla did to the Parthians. And so pretty much everything that Caracalla touched, he was destroying everything. He was, you know, destroying international relations of the Roman Empire with the other kingdoms around them. He was destroying the finances of the empire as well. He started paying the soldiers a lot of money, and the only thing he cared about was paying the soldiers more than they even deserved, way more. So the soldiers, the army was actually happy, sort of happy with him, but everyone else wasn't. And what else did he do? Oh yeah, Caracalla also, he made every person in the Roman Empire a citizen, a Roman citizen for the first time. Even people who weren't from Rome, who weren't from Italy. And it wasn't for any kind of moral reasons. It was just to increase tax, get more taxes so he could pay his soldiers. And he didn't want the soldiers to go against him. Caracalla ends up starting a war with the Parthians. And he's on campaign against them, and we don't know exactly how, we don't have too many details, but Macrinus, while on campaign in the east, you know, they're in like modern day Syria, Iraq, he intercepts a message, or he gets some message that says Caracalla suspects his Praetorian prefect, aka Macrinus, of disloyalty. And Macrinus, knowing what Caracalla was capable of, killing his own brother and killing many other people that he had done over the years, he was fearful for his life. And he found a soldier who had a personal issue with Caracalla. It said that Caracalla unjustly ordered the execution of this soldier's brother. The soldier's name was Martialis. And Macrinus plotted with Martialis to kill Caracalla. And not really with the intention of Macrinus becoming the emperor himself, but more so just out of survival, that, you know, he needs to kill Caracalla before Caracalla kills him. And it was only a matter of time before someone was going to kill Caracalla. He'd only been ruling for a few years at this point, and he had wronged so many people that it was inevitable he was going to get murdered by someone. And it just so happened on this day, as they were marching near where the famous Battle of Carrhae occurred, Caracalla wanted to stop by a temple, and he wanted to use the bathroom on the side of the road. And Macrinus's man approached Caracalla. Macrinus waved off the bodyguards to, you know, that it's fine. And this soldier just suddenly, you know, jumped on Caracalla and started stabbing him to death on the side of the road and killed the emperor. As soon as he did that, the bodyguards of the emperor, of course, killed him. And then there was no witness to link Macrinus with the murder. So after that, after Caracalla was dead, there was no emperor. For 3 days, the Senate deliberated, you know, who to put as the new emperor. They went through a few people, but eventually the army, the soldiers who they liked Macrinus, they proclaimed Macrinus as the new emperor simply because there was no one else really for the job. No one, Caracalla didn't have a son, no one really was there except him. And he was well respected, he was a smart man. And so he became the emperor from that day. And back in Rome, where the Senate was, they didn't really mind at that point because they were just happy Caracalla was dead and he was no longer the emperor. So everyone was kind of happy that something new, someone new is here, and we finally got rid of this tyrant. Macrinus was proclaimed the new emperor, and he inherited a huge mess from Caracalla. Caracalla had started wars with the Parthians, and he had also created a black hole in the finances due to him paying the soldiers, exuberant amounts of money. So Macrinus came in, and being the judicious lawyer that he was, he approached everything with fairness. And he was inviting everyone who had a grievance into his court, and they would present their case, what happened, and he would give them a reasonable solution. And he, first of all, for the soldiers, for the legionaries, he ended this new payment which Caracalla introduced. He couldn't do that with the soldiers who were already earning this new salary from Caracalla. He didn't want to take that away from them because they would not be very happy. So he just made the rule for any new recruits who joined the army, they would be paid with the original salary, what it was like before Caracalla. And people were not, the soldiers, the army, they weren't too happy about that. And then with the international disputes that he had with the Parthians, well, the Parthians just decided to attack that point. And there was a battle called the Battle of Nisibis. It was kind of an indecisive battle, inconclusive, but in the end, Macrinus, he settled for peace with the Parthians, and he ended up paying them money to just, have peace. And the Roman people and the army looked at that very negatively. Macrinus was a reasonable person, a logical person, but you have to understand the mindset of the ancient Romans. They didn't have such a logical, approach to solving disputes. It was a lack of honor. This money that he paid the Parthians, he could have given that to his own soldiers. And so who is this guy? Is he even a true Roman? And then people started questioning his authority. He's not even, from a high-class family. He's just some guy from Mauritania. And so who is Macrinus anyway? And then the last mistake that Macrinus made, he left some of the family members of Caracalla alive. Caracalla's mother was still alive, and she actually suspected of Macrinus being behind everything. Even though he played it off very well, he was pretending to be remorseful, etc. No one really suspected him except for Caracalla's mother. Caracalla's mother was still alive. Her name was Julia Domna, and she suspected Macrinus of being behind her son's death. But no one else suspected him. He played it off pretty well, mourning and pretending to be very sad about the loss. Caracalla's mother, she was pretty influential. Eventually, Macrinus ordered her to leave the city of Antioch where he was. She went on a hunger strike. Eventually, she died. But she also had a sister who was called Julia Maesa. Julia Maesa, probably, she grew up, she was from a wealthy family, she lived a good life, but she craved the power that her sister had. Her sister was the wife of the emperor, and she probably craved that power herself. And so she announced out of nowhere that her son, her 14-year-old son, was the rightful heir, was the illegitimate son of Caracalla, and therefore the rightful heir. And she only announced this after her sister had died. And if that were true, that would mean that Caracalla slept with his aunt. And so the math didn't really add up either. If the kid was 14, Caracalla died at the age of 29. So the math didn't really make sense either. But regardless, the Romans were lapping this story up, and people were going with it, and they were supporting this new young upstart. against Macrinus. Nobody liked Macrinus anymore. He was taking away all the money and making people very unhappy, even though it was the right thing to do. So pretty much most of Macrinus's soldiers defected to the army of this new challenger to Macrinus. His name was Elagabalus. Eventually they fought a battle, but Macrinus really stood no chance. He lost, and from there he shaved his head, shaved his beard, and fled. He fled through Asia Minor. He only made it to the coast of the Bosphorus Straits, where he was caught by a Roman soldier who recognized him. And they brought him back to young 14-year-old Elagabalus. At the same time, Macrinus' son, he also sent his son to escape to the east, to the court of the Parthian king, who was kind of friendly towards them, but he was also caught en route and executed. Macrinus' head was brought back to Elagabalus, and it's said that he kept it as a trophy for years to come. And little did the Roman army at the time and the Roman people know they had this new young emperor on the throne. Little did they know he would become one of the worst emperors in Roman history, this new guy that they had just put into power. So yeah, that was the end of Macrinus. And not only that, after Macrinus was killed, the Senate labeled him as a usurper, and they erased his face and memory from all the statues and all of the frescoes that they had where he was depicted. And that's why you can't find many statues of Macrinus today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video and if you learned something new, please, it would help me out immensely if you could subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.